together.
VR is all about immersion. It's a unique medium that transports you right into the game, and when it's done right, there's nothing quite like it. Enter Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, a game that not only succeeds in making you feel like you're storming the beaches of Normandy, it also has you on the edge when sneaking into a Nazi Germany camp before slaughtering them all. It puts you behind the gunner to take down enemy planes, and it gets you to use real life objects in the house for cover. But that's not all, it goes a step further. After playing countless World War II shooters in the past, no game has ever made me more appreciative of everyone who was involved in the war. You see, the beauty of VR by putting you inside the game lets you, for the first time ever, really get the sense of scale of what the Allies were up against. For example, being on a boat on D-Day, knowing full well what was going to happen when we arrived, sent a sense of chill down my spine that I have never felt before in a video game.
Heads down, we're almost there.
This is VR at its finest. Yet the game is often ignored by many and shunned by the critics. This results in an empty yet promising multiplayer mode and no hope for a sequel. Let's find out why, but first, how do we get here? The two games that take me down nostalgia road is Medal of Honor Underground on PS1 and Medal of Honor Frontline on Xbox. I distinctly remember the excellent soundtracks, especially at night whilst you sneak up on soldiers, falsifying documents to get into enemy lines, and also using an MP40 and Thompson for the first time was an absolute delight. Frontline still holds up to this day with this excellent campaign and is well regarded by many as one of the best World War II shooters out there. But with the rise of Call of Duty and the popularity of multiplayer gaming, the Medal of Honor name fizzled away. Aside from 2 attempts at a reboot in 2010 and 2012, it was over. Until 7 years later. On September 25th, 2019, Medal of Honor Above and Beyond was announced for PCVR. The trailer showed everything that I've ever wanted in a VR title. There were various folks from Respawn inspiring you with their words, saying how they've envisioned this for 20 years now, and that they're going to be taking it back to the roots of what made Medal of Honor so special, which was the stories that they told during World War II, rather than that 2010 reboot based on Afghanistan.
Midair and throwing it back.
Throughout 2020, more trailers were released at the same level of that initial one. They announced multiplayer mode, interviews with World War II vets in the gallery, even Meta, Oculus at the time, announced that it was going to be the most expensive production ever released for VR platforms. The hype was real. December 11th couldn't come quick enough. And then it bombed. The big gaming news outlets, spoiled by the impressive console shooters, hated it. The vast majority of PC VR gamers couldn't get it to run on their fancy graphic cards.
Performance issues on anything less than an RTX 2080 or equivalent.
Back then, the Nvidia 1080 was the most popular card and people were having a torrid time with it. Which did make me laugh slightly because it ran buttery smooth on my Mac Mini with an eGPU housing a $250 Radeon card, but that's beside the point. On top of this, the game was a whopping 200 gigabytes, where Half-Life Alyx, for example, is 67. Arguably one of the best looking, dense VR titles out there. In fact, I don't think anyone's arguing otherwise. But you might be thinking, after various updates to improve the performance, why is nobody talking about it today? Well, to understand this, you have to understand the gaming industry. It is brutal. For example, No Man's Sky launched with awful bugs and ultimately ended up being a game far from what was promised. However, after countless updates, it's a beloved game for a small and niche community, but the mainstream will always remember it as the game that lied to us. Rainbow Six Siege was another, flawed at launch, hammered by the gamers, and although all the issues had been fixed, mainstream remembers it as a broken mess. Unfortunately, the VR gaming industry is no different. Aspire 1 came out with countless bugs, and when Aspire 2 was announced, mainstream didn't have a clue what it was.
Whatever is said in this room stays in this room.
You would think a re-release a year later would help patch things up with the gaming community. At least that's what Respawn and Meta had hoped for. In 2021, a full year from its underwhelming PC launch, the game released on Quest 2. The first ever game to be a Quest 2 only title in mind, and the first game to ever get close to 50 gigabytes. An outstanding achievement from the initial 200 gigabytes on PCVR, but some suckers like me have a 64 gigabyte Quest, which forced Meta to release a 128 gigabyte version at the same price a few months earlier just to compensate. I know, I shouldn't have bought a 64 gigabyte Quest, but a lot of people had done, and 50 gig was still relatively large for most Quest 2 users, and the bad smell from the PC VR release wasn't going away, so once again, it failed. Which is a mighty shame, because it's so damn good for a VR title. My 10-year-old self would have been blown away if he knew that one day he'd be able to be inside of a Medal of Honor game. There was no pun intended. I promise. When it comes to VR immersion, this game stands up with most of the VR greats. Gunplay feels excellent, each gun is rightly different, the pop from the M1 Grand makes your stomach churn in awe. The reloading is so satisfying, especially when you get quicker at it. There's no crouch or prone button on the controller, you actually have to crouch or lay down in real life if you want to take cover. And it's not easy to get this right. Take a VR game like Sniper Elite, the feel from the guns is no match for Medal of Honor. They feel clunky, reloading is frustrating, throwing grenades is, well, you can't actually throw them. In Medal of Honor, you can use your teeth to pull out the pin from a grenade and throw it. Yeah, it's as satisfying as it sounds. Sure, the story isn't gonna blow you away with today's standards.
We have the papers. We have the papers. We have the papers. Okay, let's try this. We have the papers.
And the multiplayer is empty. But VR is all about immersion and fun, and this game hits those markers with flying colors. Finally, I wanted to point out the fantastic gallery mode. This has various clips from World War II veterans that Respawn interviewed and captured for this game itself, so you can truly appreciate what they've been through. I must admit, I almost cried whilst watching some of these clips. It's really touching, and I advise you not to skip out on the gallery. In fact, they even made a 24-minute documentary called Colette, which won various awards, including an Oscar. You can watch this on Oculus TV. So if you have the space, storage-wise I'm talking, definitely give this game a go. I can't promise you that you'll feel the same chills that I did, but if you have any interest in World War II, then look no further than Medal of Honor. It saddens me that Respawn will probably never create a sequel. I would have loved to see what they had come up with after a first solid entry, but alas, maybe it will get rebooted again for the third time. Thanks for watching.
What the hell is a computer?
It's a sort of thinking machine.
Thinking machines. That's all we need.